Welcome to the continuing series of legislative candidate interviews brought to you by Missoula Community Access Television, Bresnan Communications, and the Montana Cable Television Association. My name is Mark Staples, and this afternoon I am interviewing one of the candidates for House District 100, Marge Zeveta. Her opponent, Bill Nooney, could not be with us, and so Marge and I will just visit. And Marge, I'd start by having you introduce yourself, your background, what it is that is moving you to take on this task of running for the Montana House of Representatives.
My name is Marge Zeveta, like Mark said, and I'm running for House District 100, which is Lolo, Big Flat, parts of Petty Creek, west to Idaho, south to county line, and I've been a 30-year resident of the district. I own property there. I own a small ranch. I've chosen to raise my children there. They both have attended the University of Montana. I have attended the University of Montana. I've been very active in Lolo. I'm on the community club, vice president of the community club. I have been a tutor at Lolo School. I taught Sunday school in Lolo. I'm on the board of the Lolo Watershed Group. I've worked with the Five Valley Land Trust and the Open Space Working Group in regard to areas of Lolo. I was a part of the group that worked with Tim Hall and Lavelle Means on the Regional Land Use Plan for 9 years. My mom is Senior of the Year in Lolo, so we've been very active in the community center and Lolo Days and trying to promote a good quality of life in Lolo. So I feel as though I have a real stronghold in Lolo and very in touch with the people who live there and the constituents in my district.
And your district, could you describe the geographic boundaries of it? So we have viewers, I think, who sometimes think, well, I like that person. I like what they had to say, and they go to the polling booth and they realize, oh, this person isn't on my ballot. We need to explain that these House districts, you only get to vote for the person who represents the district you live in, so that they're not confused. What are the geographic parameters of your district?
Well, they redistricted last session, and so it's different, but it does run out to Kona Ranch Road. So it's all of Big Flat, Kona Ranch Road, a piece of Mullen Road, out to the pulp mill, where I worked at the pulp mill for 10 years in the lab out there. So I know a number of people out there as well. Then it goes to part of Petty Creek in Alberton. Get my directions straight. I'm going to say east of Bible Lane in the Petty Creek area. Goes west of up Highway 12 to the Idaho border, and then south on 93 to County Line Road between Florence and Lolo. So it's a very diverse group. And
you've put a lot of shoe leather and a lot of car rubber on.
Yes, with gas at 350.
In this campaign.
You can't very well walk the district. You have to, I was going to ride my horse, but you really need to drive it.
If you're elected, you will have the unusual circumstance that few legislators before you have had of dealing with the quote-unquote issue of a massive and apparently growing budget surplus, which is a very unusual circumstance for any legislators to deal with, but perhaps no less challenging than deficits, because there'll be lots of demands for that money. There are two competing plans. The surplus, by the way, is now projected to be, after the reserves are put aside, to be somewhere near $750 million by '09. There are two competing plans that have some ideas within them for uses of that money. The Republicans' plan is called the handshake with Montana. The Democrats' plan is called a square deal for Montana. Centerpiece of both plans are some kind of property tax rebate. Democrats is I believe a $400 one-time rebate for homeowners, specifically for homeowners. Each homeowner would get a $400 check or a rebate on their property taxes, where the Republicans is an 8% reduction in property taxes across the board for all property owners. Do you endorse either one of these plans in particular, and or do you have your own specific ideas about what ought to be done with parts or all of this surplus?
I do agree with Governor Schweitzer's square deal plan. As a taxpayer, property owner, single mom who has paid property taxes for 20 years, I would love to get a $400 rebate. And I think that homeowners are deserving of that. I do want to make sure, I think we're uncertain whether this is a one-time revenue or if it's going to be ongoing. And I think that we need to make sure that all the budget items are covered, all the infrastructure, items, cost, that we do have that money available to cover that, and then return what we can. And if $400 is the figure, although initially it started out, I believe, at $500 million, and now if it's $750 million, maybe that will be a larger rebate. But I do believe it should go back to the homeowners. I don't agree with the flat rate in that would include big corporations. And I think that the square deal is a better plan. And
what about
deserving.
Education? How old are your daughters? Did you say
Actually,
daughters?
I have a son and a daughter.
Son and daughter. And how old are they?
Well, now you're going to
Oh,
know
never
how old
mind.
I am. No.
Are either of them?
They're 29 and 30.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So they're grown.
What about K through 12, the kindergarten through senior in high school? The education system in Montana was found by the Montana Supreme Court to be inadequate, both as to its formula and their ergo as at least presumably to its funding. The legislature last time put $80 million in during the regular session into extra into education funding, and $37 million during the special session. And there are those who say that took care of the problem and would answer the court's call. There are others that said that just was the beginning. Do you have an opinion on where education funding is for our K through 12 system at this point and where it needs to go?
Well, I think the legislature did a good job. I believe Missoula County got 4%, in the neighborhood of 4%, as a one-shot, deal in terms of funding that. I'm a strong advocate of public education and the K through 12 program. Both of my kids went through Lolo School. They didn't have kindergarten at the time where we lived up Lolo Creek, and so actually I ended up putting my daughter in private kindergarten initially because we weren't able to go to Lolo, but they did go through first grade through 8th grade there and on into the public schools in Missoula. But I've seen huge changes in those 15 years. They're wanting kids and parents to pay for extra sports programs, extra computer programs, music, any extracurricular activities. I think we need to fund that as best we can.
Speaking of kindergarten, you know that one of the proposals, I believe, I may be wrong, but I think it's $12 million to switch the public schools. Some of them are already gone, but a number of them haven't, from half-day kindergarten to all-day kindergarten. Is that something you think is important and a good use of the money?
I think it's a good use of the money. I'm uncertain of the details. I vacillate a little bit, only in the sense that I think it would be a good idea, and the more that we can educate our children early, statistics are proving, it puts them way ahead of the game. Does a 5-year-old need to be in school from 8 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon? All-day kindergarten, maybe 6 hours. I don't know. I don't know the specifics, but yes, I think it's a good use of the money. I think it puts them ahead of the game in terms of competing with in the real world once they finish school, gives them a good foundation. But I think the parents need to participate as well and reinforce what's happening in those early years.
Switching to higher education, there is also a proposal by Governor Schweitzer to freeze tuition. I don't remember specifically how many years that is, but I think it's at least for 2 years, at the cost of $50 million to freeze tuition, no more increases during that 2-year period. And that would be across the university system, as I understand it. Is that something you favor?
I am in favor of that. I think it would give us a chance to review the system. Having put myself through school at the University of Montana and having 2 children at the University of Montana, I'm still paying for those educations, which are certainly well worth the money. But I've seen it double since I first started. And I don't know how middle-class families afford to send 1, 2, 3 kids to college at the same time. So I certainly think we need to revisit that and maybe restructure the way we do things. Are there administrative costs that we can contain better and reduce tuition, or do other tax breaks for in-state families who attend the university? I think we need to do a better job of making that higher education more affordable.
Speaking of taxes or tax breaks, we hear a lot of talk across the state of Montana that we need tax reform. That's been a theme for as long as I've been an adult and paying attention to it. And various proposals are proffered: sales tax, local option tax, tourist tax, sin tax, and then there are also people that feel that taxes very much need to be reduced rather than increased. What would you say is, across the board, your tax philosophy, and more specifically, are there any areas that you think need to be taxed more, or any areas you think need to be taxed less? Do you have any ideas about, or is the system fine as it is?
Well, as a taxpayer, I scrutinize those proposals, pretty closely. I'm opposed to the sales tax. Having come originally from the East Coast, there's always been a sales tax there, it seems to me, since I was a small child. And just once it was initiated, then it was just a means of every year it went up, and it's probably close to 10% now. So I'm opposed to the sales tax. I think that we need to make it a more fair, level playing field. Perhaps corporations need to pay a bigger share. They're not bringing in the jobs that they need to, I think, for the tax breaks they're getting to come to Montana. So I think we need to work on that. And I think Governor Schweitzer has tried to make it a more level playing field and make it a more fair tax system. And so I would support that plan, but I am opposed to the sales tax.
Does that include what's called a local option tax, where the local community can vote to impose sales tax on certain enterprises within their own community? Say, for instance, Missoula would be allowed to vote to say, well, we can tax hotel rooms, or we can tax retail items, or we can tax T-shirts or sporting goods. And that's a concept that a number of people are talking about, is to give the local communities the right to vote to impose sales taxes in their own communities.
I would probably have to explore that a little further. My thought initially is that once those taxes are passed on a voter ballot, those voters may move. And I don't know that the new people coming in would have an option to repeal that. And so I think I would rather see a different form. And I don't know if that's a luxury tax, where if you're buying a big ticket item and can afford to do that, then yes, maybe there needs to be a tax on that the wealthy can afford. I don't know that we want to tax specific low budget items that middle class working families are trying to afford a mini vacation. Do we want to tax all those pleasures that they get, going to the lake, having a jet ski. I don't know. I'm undecided about that. I'm not convinced that's the best way to go.
This is such a gauntlet to run for the legislature. I mean, I don't know if people are aware of that, but I'm aware of that. And the hours that you put into it, and the study you put in, and the competitiveness, and coming in the middle of the day to an interview like this, and all to try to go to Helena to then work 10, 12-hour days for next to nothing, and then get criticized for what you did or didn't do. You have to have something driving you to want this job. In closing, what is it? What do you hope to accomplish? And when the voter goes into the voting, it's not a booth anymore, it's a kind of a cubicle, and has to decide between you and Bill Nooney, why you?
Well, in talking with Governor Schweitzer, he wants me there. And I think I will work better with him and get more accomplished than my opponent. But I think that I have a better feel and I'm more in touch with the people who live in my district. Like I said, I've lived there for 30 years. My opponent does not live within the district now. And I think I've been a participant. And I'm a social worker at St. Pat's, so I'm used to working long hours and working with the people who need the help the most. And that's what I think I can take to Helena, that I'm a working person, working class person. I've had 2 jobs several times in my adult life here in Montana as a single mom to make ends meet. I know what that takes. I know the cost of health care. I deal with it every day. We need to improve that. We need to improve the coverage, the availability, the affordability. I know the value of a good job. I've been fortunate to have good jobs here in Montana that provide health care benefits for me and for my children, but there's thousands of people out there in Montana that don't have that, and I see them every day, and I try to find means and ways to help them. So I think that by going to Helena, I can make that difference, make a change, and work with Governor Schweitzer to improve our quality of life. And to paraphrase a quote, when Tester had mentioned at one point at one debate, you know, I'm not doing this to improve my quality of life. I love my life in Lolo at my ranch, but I think I can make a difference and help preserve and improve everyone's quality of life, not only in my district, but across Montana.
Well, Marge, I'd like to thank you for taking the time, not only to run, but particularly for taking the time to come in and visit with us today. And to the viewers, thank you for tuning in and taking the time to listen and to think about these kinds of issues and take the time to study the opinions and the stances of both parties running for the race that you'll be voting in for your district. Try to keep an open mind, try to balance the comments and their positions the best you can, but most important of all, when you've made up your mind, go make a difference by voting. And on behalf of Missoula Community Access Television, Montana Cable Television Association, and particularly Bresnan Communications, we'd like to thank you for tuning in, and again, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.